worldview.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now, worldviewtalk.com.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
When President Trump left the White House in 2021, the world was at peace. Peace in Europe, peace in Asia, peace in the Middle East. President Trump comes back 4 years later after 4 years of Democrat rule and Biden rule. And we have war in Israel and Gaza. We have Iran marching towards a nuclear weapon and spreading instability around the globe. We have the Houthis in Yemen that are shooting at our ships, shooting at our technology, shooting at passenger and commercial vessels, right? We have China increasingly on the rise, stealing American industry, stealing American technology. You go all, and of course we have the disastrous war in Ukraine. War after war, conflict after conflict, problem after problem. President Trump comes in and immediately begins taking action to fix each and every one of these fires that the Democrats started, that Joe Biden started. So we are pursuing, under President Trump's vision and leadership, as you mentioned, a path towards peace in Europe. And very important, that mineral deal will repay the United States over time for all of the money that it has spent on that war. Of course, we're all familiar with the steps President Trump has taken and is taking to deal with the threat of a nuclear-armed Iran. Just today, President Trump announced that the Houthis have said that they will not shoot at American ships, they will not shoot at American military as a result of the bombardment campaign that President Trump authorized and led. A major victory for U.S. foreign policy. And now President Trump is about to head out on his first foreign trip as a state-level trip to Saudi Arabia after taking the oath of office. And I mean, obviously, he went on the foreign trip for the funeral, but the first foreign diplomatic trip since becoming president. And that trip is going to emphasize not only the incredible commercial deals and investment in the United States as a result of President Trump's economic agenda and a result of his unleashing of American prosperity, but will also lay out the framework that President Trump led in his first term towards peace and security, towards fighting violent extremism and uniting with countries around the globe in our shared interests of harmony and stability and security. And that's another example of how President Trump is continuing to lead the entire world towards a more secure future after 4 years of fire, flame, and disaster under Joe Biden.
Giving peace a chance or more war? Welcome back to Whistleblower Wednesday here on the Rob Maness Show. And we're live on Worldview Tube, our X Spaces simulcast, Rumble, YouTube, Truth Social Plus, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and Roku. If you can't subscribe to us at one of those places, I can't help you anymore. The emerging three-front world war has shifted ever so slowly towards peace, but even the most positive of us, and I count myself among them, are really skeptical we'll get to a full peace anytime soon. On the Middle East front, the threat of a U.S. war with Iran seemed to be increasing with very harsh rhetoric over the last month. But yesterday, President Trump announced the Houthis have capitulated and decided they don't want to die anymore after the sustained bombing campaign of the last 2 months. Is this a good sign? Is one of the big questions surrounding the president's trip to the Middle East next week. And he stated in his press conference there will be a, quote, big positive announcement, close quote, next week too. Well, pardon me if I'm still skeptical, especially with the Russia-Ukraine peace deal seeming to stall at the European front as Ukraine threatens to attack the Moscow Victory Day parade on May 9th. Come on, man. That's celebrating the defeat of Nazi Germany in World War II and the massive missile attacks on Crimea and then Kiev and back and forth in the last week from both sides. Well, on the home front, hopefully information won't be harder to get regarding foreign policy these days. But with the Trump administration's staff changes, like National Security Advisor Mike Waltz leaving the National Security Council and going to be UN ambassador, we'll have to wait and see. And then on the Indo-Pacific front, China conducted its largest Taiwan invasion rehearsals last month, an exercise that was the biggest yet. And as I speak to you, 2 nuclear powers, India and Pakistan, are trading conventional attacks over these last few days. You heard that right. My guest today to discuss all this is National Security Strategist David Pine. David is a former U.S. Army Combat Arms and Headquarters Staff Officer who oversaw armaments cooperation with the former Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, and the Middle East, and Africa and the Americas from 2000 to 2003. He currently serves as president of the Task Force on National and Homeland Security. David, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. And you also, the last time we had him on, we talked about his peace proposal plan for Ukraine and Russia. It's good to have you back.
Hey, Rob. Great to be back.
Well, I guess we start with the nearest, biggest threat, and that's Iran nuclear. The Houthis capitulated, is what the president said. Do you think that this is is this real, or is it like temporary and just like, or is it a de-escalation with Iran? What's your take on all that?
Well, first, let me say, thank you for having me on the show again. It's great to be with you. I think that this is a very positive development. It's a very positive development that this unnecessary war with the Houthis in Yemen is over. We hope that it's over permanently, but there's obviously a possibility that it could restart. But this was a conflict which the Trump administration opted to initiate after Israel, decided to violate the terms of the Trump negotiated ceasefire agreement and reinvade Gaza. And the Houthis had warned that if Israel did reinvade Gaza, that they would likely resume strikes on Red Sea shipping. So the Trump administration made a decision not to wait for any attacks to occur or violations on Houthis' end, but rather to engage in preemptive strikes that have lasted, I believe, nearly 3 months. And those strikes, had limited success in terms of degrading the Houthis' capabilities. But many of their missile sites are underground and were really impervious to U.S. conventional strikes and remain in place today. So, there was limited success in that regard militarily. There was certainly some Houthi leaders that were assassinated. But essentially, they remain undefeated. President Trump made a decision that he wanted to de-escalate with Iran a little bit and end that conflict. And so he opted to negotiate a ceasefire deal with the Houthis, which is very limited in scope. It only bans them from. They only agreed not to attack U.S. shipping. The original justification or pretext that the Trump administration used to start this conflict with Yemen was to end the threat of Houthi attacks on any international shipping. But they're free to missile attack and sink British, French, German vessels, whatever vessels they want, as long as they're not American. We had previously stated during the bombing campaign that we wanted to see them either eliminate or, through military force, or have them unilaterally dismantle their long-range missile capabilities, and they've agreed to none of that. So this is clearly not a capitulation, as the president stated. As much as I would like it to be, it was not a capitulation on the part of the Houthis to the U.S., but it is a victory for peace, and for that I'm greatly appreciative.
How hard do you think it'll be to maintain that de-escalation status?
Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, Israel and the Houthis continue to exchange missile strikes following, the missile strike by the Houthis on the David Ben Gurion airport that I've flown out of. You've probably flown out of in Tel Aviv as well. As a member of a defense delegation that I went to in Israel and back in April of 2001, shortly after the terrorist strikes on the Tel Aviv discotheque that was right off the Mediterranean. That was where our hotel was located, and we weren't allowed to leave the hotel because of the security threat to U.S. government officials. But I think that, in terms of the U.S., I think the ceasefire will continue as long as Trump wants it to. I think the Houthis are likely serious about keeping that because it doesn't constrain them from other attacks, and mainly against Israel. That's what they're not going to give up until the ceasefire, some kind of ceasefire agreement is renewed that is acceptable on the Gaza end of the spectrum.
Yeah, there's no indication that the president's going to try to reel Israel in either. I think they attacked and destroyed their Yemeni airport there that he's used for civilian purposes too, for airliners and those kind of things yesterday morning. And I wouldn't expect President Trump to change his position on that. Israel defending itself has a right to. It needs to protect its territory. The Iranians, though, do you think that this big positive, quote unquote, announcement the president's going to make has anything to do with the Iranians?
I dare to be hopeful. I think that there is a decent chance that it could be an interim nuclear deal with Iran. I mean, Iranian officials, I think it was a week or two ago, they broached the idea of an interim nuclear deal. They said they were absolutely open to that. They knew that it was impossible for them to negotiate a deal by Trump's deadline, which is merely 2 weeks away. They obviously don't want to be subjected to a bombing campaign. They're perfectly happy to freeze their nuclear program. As you know, it's my assessment they already have multiple nuclear missiles in place, weaponized, ready to fire. But they've been deterred. It turns out nuclear deterrence works. Who would have thought? It doesn't matter if it's North Korea, Iran, China, the Soviet Union, Russia. All of those countries, all of our enemies have been deterred by, the U.S. and allied nuclear arsenals that prevented them from engaging in any nuclear aggressions, as sadly we did at the end of World War II. So the nuclear peace is going to be kept unless we try to effect regime change in Iran. If we, subject Tehran to a massive bombing campaign, try to assassinate the Ayatollah, I think it would be guaranteed that they would fire off some nuclear missiles at the U.S. or Israel, and they may very well have we know they have ICBM capabilities in terms of the technology, because they've proven that with their space rocket launches since 2020 with 4 different satellite launches. We don't know if they have operational ICBMs. We do know they have operational IRBMs capable of hitting any NATO country and of course, Israel. And they have one of the largest nuclear capable ballistic missile arsenals in the world, I think even exceeding our own in terms of numbers, obviously not in terms of ranges or capabilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm hoping for a big announcement, thinking big. The Russians are involved with the Iranians. The Chinese are involved with the Iranians. It would be very, very awesome to see a peace deal both in Ukraine and Russia and with the Iranians, backing off of their nuclear weapons development capability in a verifiable way, obviously. And I agree with you. I think they likely have at least 5 warheads, if not more, and that they've successfully mated them to at least their medium range ballistic missiles. And you're right, deterrence works. Nuclear deterrence still works. It will continue to work. as long as we have a strong leadership in those countries that acts in a rational way. And that's the big problem with Iran. Well, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about Russia and Ukraine. I want to get your take on what's been going on. There's a lot going on, obviously, and but we still don't have that full peace deal that we're looking for. We'll be right back with David Pine on the Rob Maness Show here on Worldview Tube.
But I want to start with the breaking news.
Yeah.
Why was Mike Waltz let go?
So he wasn't let go. He is being made ambassador to the United Nations, which, of course, is a Senate-confirmed position. I think you can make a good argument that it's a promotion. But we brought Mike on to do some serious reforms of the National Security Council. He has done that. I like Mike. I think he's a great guy. He's got the trust of both me and the president. But we also thought that he'd make a better UN ambassador as we get beyond this stage of the reforms that we've made to the National Security Council. You saw the president announce that Marco Rubio is going to step in as interim leader of the National Security Council. So I think the media wants to frame this as a firing. Donald Trump has fired a lot of people. He doesn't give them Senate-confirmed appointments afterwards. What he thinks is that Mike Waltz is going to better serve the administration, most importantly, the American people in that role, and I happen to agree with him.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and, it's not a More War Monday repeat, but there's so much war going on, we can't just do it on one day of the week now. Unfortunately, I was hoping to do away with the theme of More War Monday and go to peace deal discussions even on that day, but it doesn't look like we're getting there as fast as I wanted us to be there. And my guest today is Army veteran and staff planner, arms control and cooperation expert David Pine. David, before we get into the Russia-Ukraine thing, we got to talk about the moves inside the Trump administration on the national security team and all that's been going on there, because that's critical. The cohesion of that team, how well it's functioning and serving the president's policies, is critical to the success of America and the world, really. Now, J.D. Vance was putting the right spin on it. Hey, this is not a firing. We think he's going to be a great UN ambassador. We don't promote people to go get a Senate confirmation. He said all the right things. That's what I like about Vance. He knows how to communicate the message that he's supposed to communicate. But what are your thoughts on what's really going on with this whole deal?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's imperative that the president has a cohesive national security team around him. One of the biggest issues that people have had with the Trump administration and foreign policy thus far is they don't speak with one voice. You'll hear Keith Kellogg will go meet with Zelensky, and he'll say one thing. He'll repeat some Zelensky talking points. Then Witkoff will meet with President Putin and say, "Hey, we're really close to a deal. Putin's proposal is pretty reasonable. We ought to take it." And then President Trump needs to decide what the best option is. And up to now, he's been going with the Kellogg plan. But reverting back to Waltz, Mike Waltz was seemed to be fired over the Signalgate issue, but initially then it came out that he was colluding with Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu behind Trump's back, and Trump was furious about that. It was revealed that he's been using an Israeli intelligence version of Signal, which can archive and potentially transmit messages to Israel. So that was concerning. Obviously the whole leak issue is a really touchy subject for President Trump because he had lots of leaks during his first term, and he doesn't want to have a repeat of that this time around. So Waltz was viewed as untrustworthy, but another big reason is that Waltz was really, he spoke to Netanyahu, and he was pressing Trump to obliterate Iran with massive, military missile and airstrikes, not just against their nuclear program, but perhaps in terms of leadership as well, political and military leadership, Iranian military bases, to degrade the Iranian military and make them less of a threat to U.S. allies in the region, including Israel. And Trump was not prepared to go that far. Trump is, despite the rhetoric, I think Trump is sincere in wanting to avoid war with Iran. The problem is he's kind of painted himself into a corner where there's really no need, as I think you and I might agree. There's no pressing need for the U.S. to strike Iran because they likely already have nuclear weapons. And if we do, we open up a can of worms because there's a myriad of ways in which Iran will be able to retaliate against the U.S. Firstly, of course, by sinking ships in the Strait of Hormuz, cutting off the shipments of oil to the rest of the world. That's going to drive oil prices through the roof, perhaps double or triple. I think Trump would hate to see that. But also hitting, the 50 U.S. military bases in the region, targeting probably successfully at least one of our aircraft carriers. I think it's very unlikely they would succeed in sinking one of our carriers, but the chance of them hitting a carrier, I think, are pretty high. As they have hypersonic missiles against which the U.S. has no defense. Presumably, if they're accurate enough, I think they could do it. Set one of our carriers on fire. So taking out of commission, I think that'd be a huge loss of prestige on the part of the U.S. Then, of course, there's they have super EMP satellites over the U.S. I think it's probably unlikely they would go that far. That's probably a last resort if we threaten regime change against them or target their political and military leadership in Tehran for assassination. But they could attack us massively with cyber attacks, and cyber attacks are not always easy to confirm in terms of the point of origin, and so they might have some kind of plausible deniability. They've already engaged in cyber attacks against U.S. water purification and distribution systems, so they could help poison our water supply. They could even take out the U.S. grid, and if they were to be able to take out the U.S. electric grid over a period of several months or more, that would essentially collapse our country and not only prevent us from being able to surge military resources to a wider Middle Eastern war that could last, not just days but months, if not longer. But it could, prevent our ability to function as a country. The food distribution and water distribution system would shut down. Millions of Americans would starve to death. So the risks in terms of, any strategist, needs to look at a cost-benefit analysis in terms of what are the risks, what are the potential benefits of any military action or military strike. And I would assess, if I were Trump's advisor, I'd be telling him that the risks far outweigh any potential benefits of this strike. And even Israel has admitted that, best case, we just set back the Iranian nuclear program by 1 year, assuming they don't have nukes, basically implying we'd have to bomb them every year in perpetuity. And they bought nukes from Kazakhstan, according to a minority CIA report back in 1994. So, my assessment and the assessment of Dr. Peter Pry, our late great executive director of the EMP task force, was that they were able to reverse engineer those nuclear weapons that they bought over 3 decades ago. They likely tested one of their nukes in North Korea at their North Korea's main underground test site. And there have even been earthquakes. Some have speculated that a couple of recent earthquakes, one of which was late last year in Iran, could have been the result of an underground nuclear test by Iran.
That's true, and there's a lot of linkages with the Pakistani nuclear program, it's my understanding, and with the linkages with the North Koreans. the Kazakhstan potential purchase there, lots of opportunity for what you and I agree on to be the reality, and that's that they already have nuclear weapons that are and they're capable of delivering them at least within the Middle East, if not into Europe, and they probably are working on a way to get them into the United States too, on the coast and those kind of things. Are you concerned about communications and effectiveness of the national security team now that we don't have a national security advisor on the council and Rubio is dual-hatted in that direction, or is that just not a problem? I know there are some people that don't think we need a national security advisor.
Well, I am very concerned because, as has been said, these are two 80-hour-a-week jobs. How do you have one person handling two 80-hour-a-week jobs? It's just not humanly possible. And the roles are so different. The Secretary of State is a principal, in charge of a vast department, including, I might add, UN ambassador. So it's not quite a promotion for, Mike Waltz to be thrown out of the White House and sent to New York to be in, the admittedly plush headquarters for the U.S. ambassador to the UN because he'll be reporting to Rubio. The National Security Advisor is a staffer and has a key role in helping to, travel with the president wherever he goes and to try to mediate, discussions with the principals to try to come up with a consensus foreign and national security policy. And as a principal, Rubio is very ill-equipped to act in that capacity. And that's, the other issue, of course, is that Rubio was closely aligned with Waltz. Waltz was basically the leader of the neocon wing of the cabinet. Now Rubio takes that place. And Rubio has this oversized role that we haven't seen since Henry Kissinger. And according to President Trump, even though Steve Miller, who's part of the J.D. Vance MAGA wing of the cabinet, is according to Trump, is the leading contender to replace Waltz, Trump says that decision won't be made for another 6 months, within the next 6 months. So Rubio will likely be dual-hatted during that entire time. And I suspect Rubio has been behind a lot of the bad decisions, certainly with regards to refusing to negotiate a peace deal with Russia on reasonable terms that they'll minimally accept, and kind of taking the side of Zelensky and being determined to continue Biden's war in Ukraine, to sign this really raw deal that Trump signed with the minerals on the minerals deal. That basically, where all Zelensky's terms, all the good parts of the minerals deal were left out. And according to Ukraine, and I think it's backed up in the terms of the agreement, we won't be reimbursed a single dime. The terms of the agreement specifically prohibit any debt repayment by Ukraine to the U.S. over the next 10 years. And there's no provision. I mean, the agreement expires in 10 years, so it's possible we could replace it with something better. But what we have right now is essentially a security deal that commits the U.S. to continue selling arms to Ukraine over the next 10 years and, presumably stay involved and keep fighting the war as a participant in the conflict, which is going to, torpedo any chance that Trump will be able to make good on his brilliant plan to form a geostrategic partnership with Russia to neutralize its military alliance with China. So I think last week was just a tremendous defeat for the Trump foreign policy, especially, the fact that the State Department announced it was giving up on any further attempts to mediate a peace deal with Russia and Ukraine just this past Friday.
Yeah, we're going to dive into that in the next segment there, but that's very confusing, and I think that's part of the issue. I wanted to cover this personnel changes because the communications now is being disrupted. We just talked this whole segment about personnel, and you never mentioned Steve Witkoff, and neither did I because he didn't come to mind. But you did mention General Keith Kellogg, retired, who is still in this game, and I'm hearing maybe causing some challenges for President Trump's desires to end this war as quickly as possible and stop the killing. And when you have him and Secretary Rubio, and now no national security advisor at all, whether it's Waltz or not, even though Waltz was aligned with them. And my understanding, they kept the deputy Wong in there, and he's a Tom Cotton guy. The alignment to achieve a peace deal, other than with President Trump, seems to be pretty weak. And we'll talk more about that, David, after this break here on the Rob Maness Show on Worldview Tube. We'll be right back with David Pine.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com. Worldviewtalk.com.
Ukraine has threatened to attack Russia's Victory Day parade in Red Square, and Kyiv has signed a minerals deal with America, paving the way for more US military aid. Kyiv again. My name is Jerome Starkey. I'm the defence editor at The Sun newspaper, and this is Frontline, your weekly roundup of the most important news from the war in Ukraine. We're starting with President Zelensky's comments that Ukraine could attack Russia's Victory Day parade in Red Square on May 9th. This was a response to President Putin's offer of a paltry 3-day ceasefire over May 8th and 9th. Those dates are significant because it is Victory in Europe Day. It's the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II in Europe. So countries across Europe will be celebrating, commemorating, and of course on May 9th, an important date in Russia's calendar, Russia marks the end of World War II in Europe, a day after the rest of Europe, and it traditionally marks it with an annual military parade.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday. We might as well call it Wartime Wednesday. It's really about, though, the show's titled Giving Peace a Chance or More War. And my guest today is national security strategist and former Army officer and staff planner, arms control and cooperation expert, David Pine. And David, one of the things I wanted to ask you is with this threat to attack the Victory Day parade in Moscow on May 9th, man, I mean, how close are we to a complete breakdown in the peace effort?
Well, I mean, that's just an insane idea. The idea that Zelensky would put the lives of 29 international leaders at risk, including the president the Chinese president Xi Jinping, is really outrageous, because I think that China would probably declare war on Ukraine, and well, minimally they would send some PLA divisions to help finish off Ukraine and a lot more missile shipments and everything else. But that would be. I don't think it's likely that Russia has, I think, 29 S-400 missile batteries or some all kinds of missile defenses that they've concentrated around Moscow. I think the chances of any Ukraine missile strikes getting through would be minimal. Drones are sometimes harder to defend against, so there might be a late possibility of that occurring. But this is going to be a massive military parade. It's Chinese troops are being sent to march with Russian troops. That I don't recall in my lifetime that ever happening, even during Cold War days. And North Koreans are likely to march as well. So this is really going to be a showpiece of the Sino-Russian alliance, which the U.S. just barely woke up to, 2022, despite the fact that it's been around since 2001, and I've been, warning about it at the top of my lungs ever since, that we needed to kind of retool our national security strategy around trying to divide the Sino-Russian alliance. That's something that Trump attempted to do as far back as 8 years ago during his first term, but he was prevented from doing so by the deep state Trump-Russia collusion hoax. And now he's, the last 3 to 4 months he's spent trying to accomplish that, and now he's already giving up on his objectives. And it's exactly for the reason that you mentioned, that Keith Kellogg has been given way too much power over Trump's Ukraine policy. As you may know, Trump decided to adopt the Kellogg peace proposal in November of last year. And that was subsequently modified to allow for no Ukraine in NATO, which was a concession to Russia. And then we had this peace framework in April of this year, just last month. There some of the terms, or most of the terms, I think were acceptable to Russia. The main term at issue was that we refused demilitarization of the Ukrainian military under the terms of the Istanbul Agreement. And that's something that Russia's not going to give up. And Zelensky didn't make any concessions at all. He didn't make any concessions on Crimea or the 4 oblasts or Ukrainian, to disarm by even, one weapon system. And so I think Trump just, threw his hands up and said we're done here, but he has all the cards. Trump has all the cards with Ukraine. He doesn't have many cards with Russia. We can't really pressure Russia because Ukraine's suffered 2 million casualties, and Russia's, winning the war. They're bleeding Ukraine dry, having lost only a fraction of that in terms of less than 300,000 troops.
Yeah. There's not many cards with Russia. I mean, there's some cutting off of energy, that kind of stuff. But even that is iffy. We got a hand up over in the audience. Let's go ahead and take that question before we continue this discussion. Go ahead, Rob.
Colonel, we have Joseph.
Thank you very much, Colonel. I have a question. My first one is real simple. Just for clarity's sake, are you financially backed or paid by any NGO or sit on an NGO seat? And then second is, based on what you're saying, your analysis, do you think that Russia is going to overtake Ukraine? And do you believe there is no hope in the Middle East?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah.
I'm not on this being paid by anyone. I'm not being paid by any foreign government. I've never had any dealings with the foreign government. No NGO. My views are my own, and they've been pretty unpopular and not very beneficial for my career, I might add. In fact, as Rob's aware, there was a group that I was involved in that I'm no longer involved in because my views were viewed as too controversial. So I take a stand, for what I believe in, and I pay the price, later on. But the views that I'm stating are those that I believe are in the U.S. national security interests. And my sole allegiance is the United States of America and the protection, the defense of our 285 million Americans. But in answer to your question, I think Russia is likely to. This is really a green light. Trump's decision to have a security deal with Ukraine, to keep giving arms, to continue U.S. involvement in the conflict, to give up on a peace deal. This is really a green light, I think, to Russian President Putin to invade, to launch this massive, long-planned Russian offensive, which he had delayed to see if a peace deal could be achieved. Russia has clearly stated that there are 4 Ukrainian oblasts that he's willing to compromise on. He's given up his demand for any additional Ukrainian territory as part of a peace deal. But now that peace deal is essentially off the table, the plan for Russia is to take control of an additional 4 Ukrainian oblasts, which they refer to as Novorossiya. And those include Kharkiv, Dnipropetrovsk, and also Mykolaiv and Odessa. So that would if those provinces were conquered and annexed by Russia, that would transform Ukraine into a landlocked state, and it would make it, obviously much smaller and less powerful and much less secure. And that's really, I think that's a likely outcome of the conflict. I think it could be achieved as early as October or November.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't change and we just continue providing them weapons so that they can get their kids killed, eventually they're going to run out of kids to kill on the Ukrainian side. They're going to lose Odessa. That's why I think that he sent that massive attack into Crimea the other day. Zelensky did because he's worried about Odessa, and rightly so. He should be. If he's worried about it, though, he needs to be coming to the table with the Russians and hammer out a peace deal a la the Istanbul Agreement, which he agreed to once before, and it doesn't go much further than what they did. But I think I'm with you, David. I'm concerned that the disruption or the blockers of that continue to give Zelensky advice, and they may be, in fact, on President Trump's team.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because a lot of people don't understand the history of the Istanbul Agreement. The Russian military has been criticized, almost laughably that they can't seem to take any territory. And if you were to look at the map, I mean, you'd have every reason to believe that. But as I mentioned, the casualty ratio, exchange ratio, has been over 6-1 on the Russians' favor, and they've been bleeding Ukraine dry. But they were able to take 27% of Ukraine's internationally recognized territory within days or just a few weeks of the commencement of the war, and partially surround Kyiv. And the whole reason of doing that was not to take Kyiv or to conquer Ukraine, as the neocons have stated, but it was to force Zelensky back to the peace table. And once Ukraine initialed that agreement, actually it was March 29th that Ukraine agreed to the Istanbul Agreement with the plans signing between Zelensky and Putin in Istanbul on April 9th. And it was March 26th when Russia began withdrawing its forces from Chernihiv province, and then subsequently on the 29th from, it was from Sumy province on March 26th, and then Chernihiv and Kyiv on March 29th. And prior to that, there hadn't been a single incident where Ukraine had retaken any territory from Russia. So Putin made the decision to unilaterally withdraw Russian troops from over 30% of Russian-held Ukrainian territory in April, the first week of April, late March of 2022. And this agreement the Istanbul Agreement was essentially written by the Ukrainians. This was a Ukrainian counteroffer, which Russia immediately initialed upon receipt because they realized that virtually all the terms of the agreement were minimally acceptable to Moscow, to the Kremlin. And so, when Zelensky complains about the Istanbul Agreement being terrible or whatever the heck he's saying now, he actually was excited to sign it, according to his own chief negotiator, that he was, he said, this is a deal I can finalize in person with Putin because the only thing that was at issue were the exact extent of the partial disarmament of Ukrainian forces. And he said, I can negotiate that deal in a single day with Russian President Putin. So it's a shame that that agreement was never signed. I mean, it was a shame that Putin withdrew from northern Ukraine prematurely, because I really think if he'd waited until after the deal was signed, then Zelensky would have been forced to sign it. Russian troops would have been pulled out. I can't say that Zelensky would have kept his end of the deal, but the war would have ended. And, almost 2 million Ukrainian casualties and killed and wounded would have been spared.
Well, the opening daylight that I still see is the president himself hasn't said he's walking away publicly from the peace deal and trying to broker it. And he asked the Turks to get involved this week. What do you think about all that?
Well, I think that's true. I mean, the U.S. didn't say that they didn't want a peace deal. They said that they believed that in order to have a peace deal, they were going to put the responsibility, the onus of such a peace deal on the heads of Russia and Ukraine. So I think they obviously Turkey has. I mean, they're pretty pro-Ukrainian in terms of Erdogan, but I think Putin would still be willing to meet there because he had so much success, 3 years ago with the Istanbul Agreement. So I think that's a great idea. But as I warned back in November, the Kellogg Plan doesn't provide any incentives for Ukraine to sign a peace deal unless the Trump administration is willing to play hardball with Zelensky. Cut off U.S. military aid and threaten to cut off Starlink access, Zelensky's not going to sign a deal. And the only deal that he said he'd agreed to is one where Russian troops leave all of Ukrainian territory, including Crimea. They provide $300 billion in restitution, and President Putin surrenders to an international war crimes tribunal for war crimes that never occurred. So. Those terms are that's the very definition of maximalist terms. Putin hasn't demanded that Zelensky leave power. He's demanded new elections, but he's not demanded that Zelensky per se leave office as president of Ukraine as part of a peace deal. So Russian terms are much more reasonable comparatively to what Zelensky's proposed. Obviously, it's not great for Ukraine, but I actually think it's not a horrible deal for Ukraine either. Particularly given Putin's recent concession, which was a massive concession and great victory on the part of Steve Witkoff, that he would give up demands for any further Ukrainian territory. But once the Russian offensive begins and starts taking large swaths of Ukrainian territory, once they've exhausted the Ukrainian army reserves, I think the chances for any deal with terms as good as what Russia's offering right now are off the table.
Yeah, we've said that for a long time. Those of us on this side of the discussion, and unfortunately, here we are now with just very little daylight left. But it's still there. We got to take a break, Dave. When we come back, I want to talk about the Chinese rehearsal for invasion again, the biggest one we've seen yet. Of where? Taiwan and the Indo-Pacific war front of World War III. We'll be right back with David Pine.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
Now, China's military concluded two-day war games around Taiwan in which it held long-range live fire drills in the East China Sea, marking an escalation of exercises around the island. Beijing says that all its objectives were achieved during the drills. Taipei is on the edge, and the U.S. has condemned the drills. Our next story takes a close look at the military drills.
The tensions are peaking. China launches surprise military drills around Taiwan. Chinese warships edge closer. Armored vehicles and tanks mobilize, mimicking an imminent assault, firing multiple rockets into the skies near Taiwan. Beijing says the exercises aim to test the troops' capabilities in areas such as blockade and control and precision strikes on key targets. PLA aircraft engaging mock targets, purportedly rehearsing strikes on high-value assets. Codenamed Straight Thunder 2025A, the drills were carried out in the middle and southern areas of the Taiwan Strait. China's aircraft carrier Shandong leads the latest Navy exercises around Taiwan.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and we're asking the question, can we give peace a chance, or is war the option that folks are taking? And we've covered the other two war fronts in the Middle East and Europe in World War III. That's already gone, guys. It's already gone. We're just pre-Pearl Harbor. That's where we're at in this. And now we turn to the Indo-Pacific, where you just saw a video there of the Chinese's latest rehearsal for the invasion of Taiwan. They've done a series of these over the last year and a half, and this is the biggest one yet. My guest is David Pine, and we've also got India and Pakistan, two nuclear-armed states, trading conventional attacks on each other. And the Indians, it's reported that lost 5 of their combat aircraft last night. So it's not looking good out there. And David Pine is my guest, as I said. And David, I know that you've got some unique perspective on this. What do you think about this latest exercise from China? You combine it with their sending troops to the Victory Day parade in Russia, the BRICS effort that's ongoing from an economic perspective, and now you have this Indo-Pac war going on. We're in a tight spot, aren't we?
We really are. I mean, the U.S. has never faced, such existential threats as we're facing today from the Sino-Russian alliance. Trump's plan, his peace through strength plan, is really, it's going to take years to secure America in terms of with the Golden Dome, securing us against nuclear missile attack, something that the U.S. official policy currently does not allow us to defend against the U.S. population or the U.S. citizens against Russian or Chinese nuclear missiles. A lot of people don't realize that. That's a foolish policy we've had in place. Trump's basically declared he's not going to recognize that. He's going to overturn that official U.S. policy of over the past 2+ decades. This invasion rehearsal exercise by the PLA was distressing, to say the least, because for the first time in his during his leadership of communist China, Xi Jinping declared that he ordered the PLA to be ready for war by April 1st of this year. So when I saw this invasion rehearsal happening, I'm like, wow, he ordered the Chinese military to be ready for war, and here they are doing an invasion rehearsal. This might be it. I think as we've discussed, Xi Jinping ordered the Chinese military to be ready to invade Taiwan by 2020, not 2027. And then, of course, we know that he's fully mobilized the Chinese economy and to a large extent its military as well, way back in April of 2022. So, the Chinese military is ready to blockade and invade Taiwan on a moment's notice, and it's going to happen in kind of the same way. Essentially, there's going to be an invasion rehearsal exercise, and that exercise is going to switch in, be a snap blockade essentially, where it'll switch from being an exercise to a full blockade on a dime. And then I think China's going to essentially dare the U.S. to fire the first shot to try to break the Chinese naval blockade and put us in a similar position as FDR conspired to put China in with this conspiracy to get the Japanese to bomb Pearl Harbor as a backdoor to war against Nazi Germany. Some people think that was justified, others don't. But I think that we're in a very dangerous situation right now. President Trump admirably said it after he became president. He thought he could do a deal with China over Taiwan that would avert a Chinese invasion. Vice President Vance was asked today at the Munich Security conference where he was speaking, he was asked, "Is Trump, negotiating a strategic deal over Taiwan?" And Vance said he was not. But Mike Waltz, interestingly enough, when he was asked on Fox News just last month how the U.S. would react to a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, he said anywhere between negotiation and military action. I think that was very telling. We haven't heard anyone say from the U.S. side, in terms of the White House, say that the U.S. might respond to a Chinese invasion of Taiwan with negotiation. So that gives me a lot of hope that President Trump would at least make a very sincere attempt to avert war with China over Taiwan, even if they invaded. That we would be trying to talk them down and de-escalate to avert nuclear war with China.
Yeah, and just so folks understand, Taiwan's freedom has been declared in writing vital national interest of the United States for many, many years. It's still in our strategy documents, national military strategy, national security strategy, and those kind of things. So for President Trump to say that, I'm sure has the warmongering side of the United States elite and political establishment in very much in hand-wringing mode. But it's not surprising, really, because when you look at that vital interest, even though I don't disagree with it completely, why risk hundreds of thousands of American lives for that, especially when you look at the numbers? And Elbridge Colby, the current USD Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, said this all the time before he went into office, and that is that the Taiwanese aren't spending enough on their own defense. They're in not as bad of a situation as the NATO countries that the president had to hammer the first time and will continue to hammer, and is now saying you need to take the leadership role in the Ukraine-Russia issue if you're serious about that, and with your defense spending. That's the same situation. So I'm not surprised that the president would try to negotiate something even after the initiation of blockade and an invasion. Are you?
No, I'm not. I mean, that's really Trump's whole mentality in terms of what he ran on as a presidential candidate, and it's why he got elected. I think. I think that after 4 years of constant war under the Biden administration, either war or retreat, pulling out of Afghanistan in disgrace, and then provoking Russia to invade Ukraine, and then not doing anything in terms to try to productive in terms of pressuring Israel to end the war in Gaza. Trump inherited a world on fire, and he's done in many ways an admirable job of trying to end these Biden-caused conflicts. But in terms of Taiwan, that's really the greatest danger we face of nuclear war. And if you just look at the military balance in that region of the world, one of my former colleagues, Captain James Fennell, a former director of intelligence for U.S. PAC Fleet, has stated that we would be outnumbered 10-1 in terms of warships in any conflict with China over Taiwan in the South China Sea region. And he's also stated that China, the PLA Navy rules the waves all the way to the second island chain. So what does that tell us? It tells us that the U.S. has either we've made a decision to allow them to rule the waves. We've essentially, left too few military resources in that region of the world, or we simply don't have enough military capability to counter them. I think it's really likely the second. There's no way when China has been assessed through leaked top secret documents that I think it was Airman First Class Teixeira released on Discord, that China can outproduce us 232 times to 1 in shipbuilding capabilities.
That's right. That's true.
If we were to fight a war against China over Taiwan, and it were to stay conventional and not escalate to the cyber, super EMP, or nuclear level, it would be essentially the Pacific War in reverse. We just wouldn't have, as our, the U.S. Pacific Fleet was set to the bottom of the Pacific, we wouldn't have the capabilities to replace those ships.
Right.
And
that's right.
Just as Japan didn't have the capability to replace all the ships that we sank with our massively, superior military industrial capabilities. And, I've assessed that China currently has 3.8 times as much manufacturing capability as the U.S. by purchase power parity. That's just based on a straight translation of their nominal to purchase power parity.
That's why. Yeah, that's why I consider us to be Japan pre-1941 right now. That's where we're at, David. Well, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Tell folks real quick, you got about 20 seconds, where they can find you on social media and follow you.
Thanks, Rob. It's been a pleasure. If your viewers want to check me out, you can check me out at dpyne.substack.com, as well as on X at America First Con. Those are my two media.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We'll have you back because I'm sure we won't run out of things to talk about in this subject area. Tomorrow's Truth Thursday. Dr. Carol Lieberman is my guest, America's psychiatrist. We're talking about Trump derangement syndrome, amongst a bunch of other things. Hopefully there's a cure for that. I'll see you then.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to get